I want to talk about innovation, technology and mobile phones. It's been 6 months since the implementation of the VAT Act. Basically what the law did is we reintroduced VAT on mobile phones. So what has been the impact on this market? Bruce Howie, who is the GM Nokia East Africa, is in studio and will just help dumb down that information for us. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
6 months down the line, do you feel the pressure?
So there's been quite a significant impact to the total industry. And just to throw some numbers at you, the average selling price, or the price that consumers pay, has gone up 20%.
Right.
So a very real translation into the cost of a mobile phone.
Right. So basically you have to cushion yourself.
So that's a reality. The type of devices that consumers can afford has been impacted. That's also meant that the industry sales are down approximately 20% as well. So direct correlation, and that's a very significant decrease on the unit sales. I think the most worrying part of, or the change in the environment, is the amount of grey trading or illegal trading of devices. We're now estimating that over 60% of the devices coming into Kenya are not paid VAT. So that means ultimately that the Kenyan government is not getting the revenue collection that they had expected.
Bruce, before we get to the grey market, obviously the law is not going to change anytime soon. So what's the game plan for people like you in this business going forward?
That's exactly right. So we don't expect exemption in VAT to be brought back in. The reality is now, I think, looking at how we control the borders, the import of devices, so manufacturers like us, we pay VAT at the entry point. I think that needs to be a focal point, and really focus on those players that are not paying VAT. And then when you go into the marketplace, the retailers and the wholesalers, they also need to be reminded that to pay VAT and ultimately support legitimate business in this country.
How do you knock the grey market dealers from this chain?
So it has to be an industry-wide solution. We have a point of view as Nokia, but ultimately, with government support and the entire industry, we need to address this. And it won't happen overnight. We understand that, but at 60% of the market sales now being illegally traded without VAT being paid, that's a significant number. Right.
Just take you back to a few figures that you threw in earlier on. You said the implementation of the VAT tax meant that you, on your part, added a 20% on the pricing. Is that a Nokia position, or it was across board?
Okay, so we didn't change our pricing policy at all. But because we are now having to pay 16% VAT, the price of the product through the value chain has now increased. So ultimately, the price charged to the consumer is therefore increased. So no changes in our pricing. Our pricing is very consistent across Africa. But what has impacted is ultimately that cost of VAT has been transferred onto the consumer, and therefore the increase in the cost of a phone.
Right. Bruce, there has been a few actions that have made news recently, the acquisition of Microsoft. We want to talk about that. But before that, 10 years ago, Nokia was the mobile phone. Right now, the struggle between Apple and Samsung hasn't allowed us to pay attention to Nokia. What is happening?
So I don't think we need to worry too much about Apple in this market, but certainly Samsung and Nokia are having great battles here. We can continue to have the most aspired or aspirational brand in this marketplace, and I think that's a great cornerstone for us. We continue to innovate, so Nokia has gone through a real revolution of our device portfolio in the last 2 years, especially in the last year where we started to launch in Lumia smartphones operating on the Windows Phone 8 platform. And it's really starting to catapult us into what we think will be a great year in 2014.
How is that going? Figures?
Oh, so we can't talk figures, but I think if you're behind the most aspirational or the most desired brand in the market, then we're always in a very strong position. We're especially strong still in the affordable feature phone and the first smartphone experience, and that's where we appeal to this market very, very well, especially the youth market in Kenya.
Right. The dominance, or rather your concentration in the feature phone market, is that a Kenyan approach, or do you have that across board?
So I think the reality is that we are still in a market that is driven by price, which is why increasing price by 20% in a market like this will have an impact to overall sales. The market wants to see smartphones grow, and I think that's ultimately very, very good for a total ecosystem. But the reality is we are still very, very, very strong in feature phones, and we can't ignore that. It's still 70% of the industry sales.
The Lumia is your brightest feather in the hat right now. What's next?
So we continue to innovate with Lumia. In fact, this week we just launched 2 new phablets within the Lumia range. So the first phablets operating on Windows Phone 8.
Right.
So beautiful 6-inch devices, the 1520 and the 1320. And we think that's really going to be a significant move now in this industry space, where the rich content that you're able to get on device, you need to have that big, vibrant screen.
Right.
And that's why we think phablets will be very successful.
Right, Bruce, our time is up, but in a few seconds, we cannot leave this discussion without mentioning this. Lots of phones are coming up, lots of innovation, but also we have a lot of dead and redundant gadgets around. What's Nokia's position in regard to e-waste management in Africa?
So we've always sustained a very green point of view, Nokia, and we've always encouraged recycling.
Right.
We've been a part of the recycling initiatives that are kicked off in the country.
Right.
And it's across the board as an organisation. We're very focused on e-waste. I'll give you an example. The 1520, the new product we just launched, the back cover is 100% made out of recyclable products.
Right.
So we will continue to remain that focus and work with the industry to make sure that we do take care of the environment.
All right. That's a good place to end the conversation. Bruce Howie, Nokia GM East Africa, thank you so much for coming to the news desk. We have to jump to sports now.